Hi there, it's Nicole here today with some Seasons Tweetings Christmas cards featuring new for November holiday stamps from Honeybee. And there's stamps and dies and all kinds of amazing new products for holiday cards. I'm going to share a couple of cards featuring birds. Thus, the name of this video is Seasons Tweetings. In fact, one of the stamp sets is Seasons Tweetings. We're going to start with the little bird sledding down the hill with the snowman in the background. This is with the Snowbirds stamp set. And there are lots of snowflakes in this particular stamp set. These are all large 6x8 stamp sets, or at least these two bird stamp sets I'm using. And I have grouped all the snowflakes together on an acrylic block, and then I'm stamping that image on some smooth white cardstock. That way I can stamp a bunch of snowflakes at once, and it cuts down the time. And I want to fill about the top 2/3 of this background to build my sky. I'm sprinkling on clear embossing powder. This is the Nouveau clear embossing powder, because you can use white or clear. I want the white of the background to show through when I add my ink colors to this background. I'm simply going to heat all of this with my heat tool, and then I can do a little embossed resist. I have really been drawn to the greenish color combination for my holiday backgrounds this year. And I tend to just kind of go with whatever my gut feels for that particular season. And since I have been loving it, I thought I would try it out again for these bird cards. I am using a combination of Lucky Clover, and for this card, I'm adding in Cracked Pistachio. I love this color, these two colors together. They're really great if you want a nice ombre from light to dark. And I'm going to mix these together for my background. Get a nice seamless transition for these two colors. And then I want to buff the ink off of the clear embossed images, and it's really going to make those snowflakes pop. I've also spritzed the background with water from a distress sprayer to add in that kind of snow flurries type of feel. So here is my background. I am going to use some of the new hill borders to create a couple of snowy borders along the bottom edge of my card. And what is awesome about the hill borders is there's 3 different styles of hills, and then 3 coordinating dies that are stitched dies. So if you don't necessarily want the stitching on your dies, you don't have to use them together. However, they perfectly complement one another if you want to. So I am going to add stitching detail to the 2 borders I'm using for my card, but you could definitely just cut the hill border if you prefer the non-stitching, or maybe it doesn't go with your card design, whatever it might be. What I really love is I like die sets like this that are a little bit more usable than maybe some that are made one way or another. It just increases the possibilities. So again, for the more curvy background, this is going to be back behind the border we just die cut. I'm going to line up the stitching die now, hold it in place with a little Post-it tape, and run that through the die cutting machine. And there's that great little stitched border. And here are the 2 borders for the bottom of my card. Next, I am going to take a bird image, the little snow bird image, snowman bird, and also I'm going to grab the holly and berry images from Merry Christmas, another new stamp set for the November Honeybee release, and ink these up on Bristol Smooth cardstock using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I love this ink because it gives a nice bold black outline. It doesn't work with Copic coloring, but if you're using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, which is what I'm going to be using here today, it is fantastic. And I am going to be doing a little coloring with my markers, no watercoloring per se. However, I think the end results give a little bit of that look just because these are a water-based marker. it's a different kind of marker if you maybe don't have or don't prefer Copic markers, or maybe you just want to do something different. Since I do like Copic markers, I do like colored pencils. I like all the coloring mediums, I guess I should say, but I really love my zigs. I think they give a really fast coloring. I like to lay down my dark color and blend out with the lighter color. And for things like the Snowman, where I'm adding this shadow mauve, but there's nothing really lighter than that to blend it out, I like to take the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen and blend out that color. So any harsh lines are going to get blended out really nicely because the Zig pens are water-based as well. I'm going to color everything in. I have listed the image I'm coloring, and then I have listed the marker number and name. So if you're wondering at any point what marker exactly I'm using to color, they are all listed above. Now I am not going to list these at the end of, or not the end, the second half of this video for the other card because all the marker combinations are exactly the same. I will add just the one additional combination I'm using there. But both cards are similar. They both feature birds from the Honeybee releases, but they're not exactly the same. Cute little sled, so that little bird's sliding down the snowy hill on his sled. I like to clean off the tip of my marker frequently, I just use the little areas outside of my stamped image. Adding some grays to the white areas and blending them out, and then blending out with I blended out with a lighter gray and then really blended it out with the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen, and laying down my dark colors for the birds. Now this is probably the trickiest for me. A large area tends to take a little more work to blend it out successfully, and I'm only using the two colors, and I'm cleaning that tip often because I want the belly area of the bird to remain the lightest. I'm going to just kind of feather in my dark colors for the wing, go over those with the lighter, and then blend out again. I really love how the little birds turned out. In fact, the birds for the second card are going to be colored exactly the same. I really like that color combination. I've die cut the images, the bird and the snowman, and the holly and berries they're from the Snowbirds and Merry Christmas stamp sets. And then I'm going to start putting it all together. And I've got all my little images. I like to double check before I commit to adhering anything. Just make sure I've left room. Now for the Merry Christmas stamp set, there is a coordinating die set as well, where you can die cut the outlines of the large words. There's Christmas and holidays in this stamp set. Or you can die cut them, and die cut and layer. So many ways to use this greeting set. I love this about Honeybee. I decided to die cut the word holidays from cardstock adhered to Fun Foam with Stick It for a little bit of a dimensional greeting. Once I popped it out, I went ahead and stuck it on my nonstick craft mat and inked it up with Candied Apple Distress Oxide ink, just partially, leaving the top part of the letters white. And I'm going to put this in place right on my background. I've also die cut the happy word. There's a die for it, or you can use the stamp. Either way, use them together, use them apart. I am just going to use the die cut. It is also die cut from the cardstock attached to Fun Foam, and I will show you that here in just a second. Now I attached my little holly berries up here at the top. I'm going to move it here in a little bit. It isn't necessarily in the way, but I think it's a little more successful just moving the leaves a tiny little bit, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But I like that little pop of color up near the top of the card. The bottom half of the card is definitely more embellishment heavy because of the two images here. And these are good sized images. So cute. So the little snowman is going to be sitting in the background here on the back snowbank, and the bird on the sled is going to be sliding down here in the foreground. And I'm leaving some room along the bottom of the card. This is a great place for additional text or even images if you wanted to, or it could just be left as a nice white space area. I'm inking up the word happy prior to popping it out of the cardstock fun foam sandwich, simply because these are teeny tiny letters and it's going to make it a lot easier. Then I'm going to pop them out and just attach those right to my card. By having stick it on both sides of the fun foam, it makes these dimensional stickers. This is my favorite thing to do. I've done it a lot. I just love the look of a dimensional die cut greeting. And that little dot for the I and holidays gave me some trouble, but I'll get it stuck on there. It's pretty teeny tiny. You could even replace that with a jewel if you wanted to, instead of trying to stick that teeny tiny little die cut. Here's where I decided to move my leaves just a bit, and I like that better. There are also some new rainbow rhinestones from Honeybee Stamp, and these come in about, I think there's 3 different sizes in the package, and I'm taking the little ones and some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium and attaching them to the center of some of those snowflakes in the background for a nice pop of glitter. I love all of these little sparkly bits here in the background. I think they just add to the design of the card, add to the winter feel. And I love these little rhinestones. They're flat back, so they're going to attach beautifully to your project. And I like to use a quick stick tool to get them exactly where I need them to go. A little black glaze pen over the eyes on the snowbird. Snowman bird. I don't know what you call him. That's kind of, because I know he's supposed to look kind of like a bird. And then I'm going to take a little glossy accents and go over the beaks on both the snowman and the bird, and even add a little to the holly berries. I always love to add a little glossy accents to almost every single project. So here is the card. I could really put this on a card base now if I wanted to. I decided to add a few extra finishing touches. I wanted white polka dots on the scarf, but sometimes the white pen I use just doesn't work very good over zigs. It works fantastic over Copics, but not that great over zigs. So I decided to take some Nouveau crystal drops in Simply White and add little droplets all over the snowman's scarf, and that worked beautifully. And you can create those little drops in any size you want. Next, I am using that white space along the bottom of the card to finish off my greeting on my card with From Our Family to Yours. This is also from the Merry Christmas stamp set and stamp and die set, same set that the rest of the greetings come from. And I'm stamping this with that Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink along the bottom of the card. For my next card, I'm going to create a little window here with 3 little birds from the Seasons Tweetings stamp set, all saying Seasons Tweetings. Kind of similar, at least in color, to the last card. This time I'm going to take an A2 size piece of smooth white cardstock and use one of the A2 double stitched frames to die cut a frame from the center of this panel. And I'm going to do a little pop-up frame. No shaker or anything like that, just a little dimensional frame around the outside that I can tuck one little bird hanging upside down from, and add my greeting to that center panel, but then add some snowy borders again with the hill borders along the bottom. And I'm going to just kind of gauge where I want everything to go before I start inking things up. And I'm going to use this kind of wavy border from the Hill Borders dies. And what I want to do is stamp my sentiment and the music notes from Seasons Tweetings on that center rectangle. This is going to be embossed resist pretty similar to the snow background from the last card, just not near as much embossed resist. And instead of a die cut dimensional greeting, this is going to be an embossed resist greeting. If you wanted to do a die cut greeting, there are dies for the sentiments in the Seasons Tweeting stamp set where you could stamp the sentiment and die cut it with the outline stamp and pop that on your card if you wanted to. So I've got the three music notes and my greeting here, and I'm going to stamp the word Tweetings in the music notes first. And then I'll go back in and add Seasons. That way, the two words can be close together. If I tried to stamp them both right now, they're not going to be as close together as I want them to be. And I really need to gauge where my birds are going to be, where the bird's going to be coming in from that top left corner and where the bird on the bottom right is, so that I don't cover up any of the sentiment. I'm going to use an anti-cling tool first, and then simply stamp my greeting and music notes right on the background here. Again, use the Nuvo Clear Embossing Powder. And I probably wouldn't have had to keep these two frames together. I did use a little Post-it tape to hold them together. Originally, I thought I would add color to the frame and not just that center panel. And as I started to ink up my inside panel here in just a little bit, I decided I really thought the frame would be more effective left white, so I'll ink up only the center panel. So I'm heating up all my other images, and then I will add the word Seasons right above that. I didn't want any of the embossing powder to come off or anything like that. Line that up. The Misty is just a lifesaver in this instance. I feel like it really helps to be able to stamp things straight and also to stamp multiple images at once. So next I am going to go ahead and pop that frame out, or the inside panel out. And then ink up this background with the Lucky Clover Distress Oxide ink. I got a little smudge. The Tombow Mono Eraser is fantastic for removing those. Just like before, only instead of adding cracked pistachio, I'm only going to use the Lucky Clover ink here. I'm going to do embossed resist, buff that ink off the top of my project with a dry paper towel, spritz this with water from a distress sprayer, and set it aside to dry. And then I can die cut a frame from another piece of smooth white cardstock. I've got a card base here, and I'm just going to hold the frame down in place and replace that center panel so that it's exactly where I need it to go. On this scrap of cardstock, I am again going to die cut my border. And first die cut it with the straight die. And because there's some stitching around that frame with the double stitched frame, I decided I definitely wanted the stitching detail along my snow border, so I'm going to use the coordinating snow die, run that through my machine, and then I can pop this border in place along the bottom edge. And it's a little too tall, so I'm going to trim off just a tiny bit from the bottom. Try that again, and that looks much better. So one side of my frame has that great little snow border. And this whole frame is going to be popped up with a little foam adhesive. I'm using one layer of Scotch foam adhesive all the way around the edge. At this point, you could make this a shaker card if you wanted to. I think that that would be really fun. All you'd need to do is add a clear window and some shaker material, and then you'd have some nice, maybe falling snow or something like that for the background. On some scraps of Bristol Smooth cardstock here, I try to save all of my little scraps. I am stamping some birds from the Seasons Tweetings stamp set, 3 of the 6 designs here. again using the Onyx Black VersaFine ink. And then I'm going to color in the birds just like I did for the images on the first card I shared. So these nice brown colors for the birds, some yellows for their beaks, and then I'm going to be using a combination of colors for their little hats that they're wearing. So cute. Lots of great ways to color in these cute little images. My gray colors again for the brim of the hat and the little pom-pom ball at the end. So I've got a red hat and a pink hat, and my final hat, the little more elf design hat on the final bird, is going to be green and red. And I'll add some little, not jingle bells, but I think jingle bells on the tips of that hat would be super cute if you had some little miniature ones. I decided to add Nuvo crystal drops kind of to give that feel, even though they're not really jingle bells. So here's his little green, the little red brim of his hat, and the jingle bell at the end of his. Browns again for the bird. I really just loved how these colors worked together for the birds. I'm going to die cut these with the coordinating dies. And then I want that little bird here in the corner to be hanging out, but I need to just trim him up so that he lays nicer. I will be popping him up with a little foam adhesive, but he'll lay a lot nicer if I trim off that excess paper. So I'm just going to add a little foam adhesive to the back of him. I've already popped my frame in place on my card with that foam adhesive. Oh, I guess I haven't. I'm going to right now. And just peel off that backing paper, and you'll see what I mean. He'll lay really, you can kind of just tuck him up under the edge just a tiny little bit if you trim off part of that image. I think it would also be kind of funny to have little feet sticking out too somewhere. So here I'm just going to kind of tuck him underneath the side and the top, and it looks like he's hanging down from the top of the frame. These are really nice sized birds as well. So by tucking one under the frame, there's going to be a full-size bird, this one right here on the card, and then another one peeking in from the bottom left corner. You're able to really get a lot more images on the card without it feeling too full. So this little guy is going to be hanging out down here near the bottom edge, and then I'm simply going to flip it over and trim off that excess. So all these little birds are just popping in to say Seasons Tweetings. I'm going to take a black glaze marker to the eyes on the one bird, and then I'll go back in with a white marker once the black is completely dried. And I'm taking Red Berry and Simply White Nuvo crystal drops and adding little drops to the hat down there along the bottom. And then adding a scattering of white Nuvo crystal drops all over my background. We'll take a little green and fill in the music notes. These are just so fantastic for being able to create drops of any size. And then for even more pop of color here, I'm going to take the Red Berry and add a scattering of red Nuvo crystal drops all over the background as well. I'm going to finish by taking my white pen or my black pen and adding eyelashes to the one bird, and then my white pen and adding little drops to, or little dots rather, to the cheeks of all of my birds. Thanks for joining me today for these two cards featuring stamps and dies from the Honeybee November 2017 release. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Honeybee stamps that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.